how did this all start? Like, where did your passion for coding and all, how did that begin?
Interesting. Yeah, the earliest memory that I have actually is, so randomly, my grandmother was a data entry expert at some like law firm, and she like for some reason knew QBasic back in the day. So I was at her house in California when I was like 12 years old, and she was like showing me QBasic, and I was like, oh cool, I can like write these little programs and do cool stuff. But then I learned, oh dude, I can draw graphics with QBasic, and I was like, oh, is this how like video games are made? And so I kind of fell in love with programming through like Game Maker, right? So from basically 8th grade to senior year, my friends and I would all basically like stay up all night on the weekends, like trying to make cute little Game Maker games. And then the InfoSec thing kind of happened. I found Hack This site, which I'm not sure if it's actually still around. It's like a Hack the Box equivalent. And I learned like you can use your knowledge of programming to do like cybersecurity stuff, and that's kind of where it all took off. So yeah, man, it's just very young people that I knew kind of showed me things that I thought were interesting.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you think it's more dangerous if you have like an unrestricted local model, or do you think like Claude Mythos is more dangerous when it comes to security and like penetration testing?
Interesting. Dangerous for who, I guess is the question.
So say you have like, I don't know, like a site like Google. Would you say like Claude with its like paid tokens and a home lab, which one would you be more worried about being able to like constantly attempt to break into that site and like find vulnerabilities and scan?
Yeah. So from a vulnerability research standpoint, I would say the hosted models, the ones that you pay to use that you don't host yourself, are probably better. They're probably more dangerous. The reason being, for the AI to not hallucinate, you have to throw basically a ton of GPU compute at it. And so when you self-host models, you get like the same feeling, like the same vibe from the AI, but it's much more likely to hallucinate, is what I'm told. Whereas the ones that Anthropic hosts, they have literally data center for CPU for you to use them on. And so they're more accurate that way. However, when they're being hosted by somebody else, there's more guardrails, right? But I think generally the ones that you should be like using for VR and like worried about, if you want to call it that, are the ones that they host themselves, because they're more powerful. They have money. They have more money than you will ever have to build a data center. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where my thoughts on that lie. To be very clear for anyone watching this and for you guys, I am not an AI scientist. This is mostly what I've read, but this is what I currently understand about the models for sure.
If you're using AI to vibe code a website, where do you think people should use it and shouldn't use it? Like back end and front end and what?
Yeah. So my philosophy on this is if you consider code as like a block diagram, like squares, right? And the lines between the squares are like security boundaries, right? For example, if you have a front end and a back end, the front end doesn't really have any security boundaries because it's just in one location. And the back end on its own is generally not a security boundary. It's when those two touch are where things get a little weird, right? So for me, like you can vibe code the front end, and there are certain like plumbing components of the back end you can vibe code, but you really need to be careful when you talk about wiring those two up together. Or for example, wiring your back end to the database, right? Or wiring your back end to some kind of caching layer. Like all of those pieces are where, you know, an external entity puts in data, and you need to be very careful about how that data is treated and used. So again, vibe coding, not a big deal. It's just you got to be careful when and how you vibe code.
I actually have never. Do you do red teaming at all, or do you mostly do vulnerability research?
Mostly vulnerability research. I've done red teaming on. Red teaming is such a loaded term, right? But it's like the red teaming of devices, more or less. I don't do like network red teaming. I've done more, from a black box security standpoint, how vulnerable is a device, like that kind of red teaming.
So like you wouldn't know anything about like AI phishing with like phishing?
No, nothing like that.
Do you think, have you seen any like big mistakes when people like use AI to try to crack binaries and stuff? Do you see like a lot of hallucination with binaries, or do you see
100%. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have read this paper. Let me see. Here we go. I'm gonna put it in the chat. So granted, this was, it's almost a year ago at this point, but Sean Heelan, who was a researcher, he used O3 at the time to try to find a pre-existing CVE in a binary, and then in turn, while doing that, found another 0-day. So a good write-up on how he did this. But the takeaway from this is, when you're doing AI research, the signal to noise ratio, which is basically how much is real versus how much is fake, is so low. You have to go through and manually triage all the work, right? Like the place that I used to work at, I'm not gonna give details because something NDA, but basically we used AI to do VR, and like it was really, really good and cool, like to the executives when it found bugs, but there were like hundreds of bugs that weren't real that we had to triage and like prove weren't real, right? So it's really good at automating the process of AI or of vulnerability research, but it's gonna make a lot of false statements about things that are guarded. Like for example, or that aren't real. Like if function A and function B, right? And function B has a vulnerability where like, oh, it does a mem copy and doesn't guard the mem copy, but function A guards it, right? The AI has a very hard time seeing that A guards it, so it'll tell you B is vulnerable. So now you have to go into the code base and figure out, is it a reachable code path? Is it actually real? And that takes a lot of human time.
Are you worried at all about like Anthropic's intentions? Because like I find it a bit suspicious because they seem that they're trying to be on this, like look like they're on the side of the people with all the like denying the government of use of their AI and stuff. And do you think they're trying to integrate themselves into your code, or do you think I think that just might be one of my superstitions and I'm just like crazy.
Sure. So I'm not going to speak to their intentions. I don't know. But I will say is that, if I were to own $1 billion company, it would be very convenient if all of my customers really heavily depended on me and that I made my product very expensive, right? There is a really big concern right now that companies like OpenAI and Anthropic are running inference, right? Inference is a process of like you put tokens in, you get tokens out. That process is inference. There are concerns that they're running inference at a loss right now, like it's actually costing them money, so that once the regulations get put in place, once the people are used to using AI in their workflows, and it's like, all right, bada bing, now that costs 10 times more, but you're already, addicted to it, if you will. So whether or not that's their intention, I don't know. I do personally find it very annoying that like Sam Altman went on this big PR run like 3 or 4 years ago, and he's like, oh, AI is going to cure cancer. And then he made Sora. You know what I mean? Those two ideas are very non-congruent and like annoying to me. Again, is that their intention? I couldn't tell you, but it is odd. I will agree with you there.
What's your opinion? Because I see so many like videos and stuff. I don't know if it's like entirely true, but I see so many videos of people just entirely using AI. Like they like streamline these videos of how many Claude tokens they're using and like Claude code. So do you think because my dad's company, their CEO is an old dude and they've like outlawed basically using AI to code. How integrated do you think is it?
And integrated in what way? What do you mean?
Like what percent of, are you worried, or like do you know the percent of work that's being done by AI rather than humans? Like
So I don't know specific numbers. But I will say, at least in all the companies that I've observed, so ones that I actively work at right now, or like I used to work at, or ones my friends work at, right? There is a significant drift where like a lot of work is being done by AI. And obviously, I think in the public on like Twitter or whatever, you're probably seeing a lot more of like the indie coder community where, people are just literally like prompting up entire systems, entire front ends, back ends, like the whole thing is vibe coded. And like that makes me very nervous. I think most large companies are treating it fairly reasonably. The problem is it is a slippery slope, right? Where if a company has like one meaningful success with AI and it saves them 20% of money spent, right? Like what does that mean for the future? How far does that go? And then do they eventually, does it bite them where like, okay, we don't have enough humans to audit the AI generation and like something catastrophically fails, you have to hire more. I think we're gonna see a bit of that roller coaster for a long time where like AI will automate a lot of things that humans do. But at the end of the day, A, it makes mistakes, and B, someone has to run the AI, right? And I think companies will kind of go through that pain for a long time.
So in all, you think it's more of a nuanced thing? It's not like one side?
No, yeah. That's the thing. Like, it's so easy to see this as like a black and white conversation. Like, oh, AI is evil, or like literally go code your $1 million B2B SaaS, right? Like, there's a very delicate middle ground where like I do personally see it as a very useful tool. I use it literally every day, both for personal work and my job. But at the same time, you can't ignore the fact that it like will take away some jobs, and like the data centers do have real environmental impact. This is, in my personal opinion, like the role of government, right? Is like, okay, this thing is good, but it has bad side effects. Let's create legislation that finds the middle ground, right? The problem with any government intervention is that requires like a knowledgeable body of people without interest on the sides. That gets very complicated very quick. But yeah, man, I'm not the kind of person that's like, oh, AI bad, AI go away. I used to be that way back in like the 3.5, 4.0 days. But now I've seen the models improve to a place where like they really do have a meaningful impact on work, like, in a good way. So it's just striking a balance where you're doing the work, but you're also improving yourself, because you don't want to just like become a prompt engineer, because then like what value do you provide?
So in California how they passed the whole age verification on operating systems law. Like
yes.
The knowledge that the government holds about tech and how it works and like how the inner systems work, like I can't help but not trust the government when it comes to making laws about these things, because like a lot of these officials who are proposing these laws have no idea how, like, for example, I don't think the governor like considered that his smart fridge runs on an operating system.
Right.
He'll need, like, do you think the government has the brains to do this sort of thing, where they can actually enforce these laws in a way that is.
And sorry for the slip up earlier, but I was following up on like misinformation, especially. I feel like that's really important. How do you think when AI gets stronger and stronger, how are we gonna detect that? Like,
Yeah.
you had said the story AI video, just like you robbing a bank. How would eventually it would be so realistic? How would you be able to tell like for what's right from wrong?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a problem that is real that I don't have a good solution to. I think there are two things that happen. I mean, one of them is just the maybe there's a world where we create like a cryptographic signature version of a camera, right? Where like we have some cryptographic root of trust, and like videos and photos are signed by that root of trust when they're taken from a camera, and then if they come off Sora, they're not signed, so they're not real, right? But then this comes into the problem where it's like, at the end of the day, there has to be a cryptographic root of trust, and then if you do that, that means that root of trust can issue any photo that they want, and it's like, how much do we trust that body? So that's the thing. Also, I mean, part of it I think what the long run looks like if we don't regulate that is that the internet and just like digital media as a whole becomes less valuable, right? Like, yeah, if anyone can make an image of anything and put it into court, how much value does digital media have, right?
Yeah.
But then the question is like, how do you run a judicial system without a photo? And they did back in the day, obviously. So like, I'm not old enough for that, but it used to exist. So I don't know. I think it just overall, in the long run, if not regulated, devalues the technology that we've been using for so long.
And like the cryptographic thing, that's basically like you're suggesting like a watermark kind of just for real things.
Yeah. But again, like the question with any cryptographic signature solution is like, who is the authority on that, and why do they get to say what is real? You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you have to hold that root of trust somewhere. And again, there may be like a better solution. Like unironically, like that is a thing that maybe blockchain is good for, like a decentralized ledger of like signatures for media, that like everyone can observe. But yeah.
I have like sort of a follow-up kind of.
Sure.
Like in the case that like what Zuna was talking about, how AI might get good and or not good, like extremely good, develop videos or like articles that have a whole bunch of like misinformation but are unable to tell apart from real articles and videos.
Right.
What if, or I don't know a whole lot about coding, right? But I'm wondering if it would be possible to almost encode like not self-destruct is not the right word, but like an internal turn-off button, like if it tries to cross said boundary, it's just like shuts its entire stuff off, even if it means like destroying that like current session or whatever.
Within the AI.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean so first of all, I think the AIs already have like certain phrases you can say that will like end the session. There's like weird like combinations of words that will kill it. But the problem is like you need to present an economic or legislative incentive to the company to create that, right? Like why would OpenAI do that today if Sora makes them millions of dollars? It doesn't, by the way. It was a loss leader and they had to kill it, right? But I'm saying like if the generation of fake images makes Sam Altman $1 billion a year, why would he do that? You know what I mean? So that's where legislation comes in, where they're like, hey, now it's illegal. Stop. And now they have to do it. And that would be a solution in that case, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, Finnegan, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Because you were talking about something.
Well, my point kind of finished right before my computer crashed, but
Nice.
that's all good.
Okay.
Is that all from you guys?
Yeah, that's about all I had to
I have
ask.
to eat lunch soon anyways.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course, guys. Thanks for having me. Again, I apologize it took so long to get here, but yeah, happy to answer your questions. And what grade are you guys in, by the way?
Freshman.
Ninth grade.
Freshman? Okay, cool. Well, in like 2 years, when you're thinking about colleges and careers and stuff, if you have additional, even in the future, if you have any questions at all, really, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to respond and help you guys out. Weird world out there for sure. So if you have any more questions, let me know.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
So I was there, and I was like an intern in the IT department, in the networking department. And there was a guy that worked there. He was like a scary dude, and he was like, had a director title. And he met me and was like, he seemed like a nice guy, but he was like on the second floor. He had this glass. He could see like over everything that everyone was doing below him on the ground. And I was on like the ground floor in this like cubicle. And it was like my first week there, and I was just, playing around with some stuff. And I accidentally broke into the print system by just, playing around with stuff. And I didn't know how to get out of it without taking all the printers offline that were printing the checks. So I was like, oh, this is not good. Like, I don't want to go to jail or something, and I don't want to get in trouble. It's like my first week as an intern. So I went in there and I fessed up and said, I was just checking out my new computer, not a big deal, but I got into this print system and I don't want to break anything. And the guy looks at me and turns like bright red in the cheeks. And he's like, what were you doing? And I just explained him what I did. He's like, I don't even know how you got in there. And then he starts screaming at me. And the next thing I know is I find myself in the general counsel's office. That's the head of legal for the whole company. This is like a very large company. This is like, hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe $1 billion company. This is a big deal. You don't want to be in the general counsel's office as a kid, as an intern. And the guy asked me, he's like, what were you doing? Like what happened? And I said, look, I wasn't trying to do anything bad. If I was, I wouldn't have told it myself. And he said, all right, tell you what, here's what I want you to do. For the rest of your internship, I want you to document every security vulnerability that you can find at the company. Don't get caught. I don't want to see you back in my office. And 1 week before I leave, I want you to write like a memo, a document, and I want you to give me a summary of all your findings. And I'm thinking, well, this is much better than jail. So I'm gonna do that. And so I spent the summer, kept my head down. I didn't get into trouble, but I learned to do all sorts of things. Like I would break into the data center. They had these fancy biometrics at the time where you had your hand geometry. But I noticed the door was really wide open, and you could stick your credit card and bypass the whole system and get into where all the data center was. And so I just documented all this stuff, and that kind of got me. So at the end of the summer, I gave my report. The guy was like, "This is really good, thank you." And that kind of made me think about security and better to do this and not go to jail and do it for the good guys than the bad guys. And so that's kind of actually how I got into security. Was like that. I was home more. And so then I ended up going to Navy Federal Credit Union, which is where I'm at now. And I've been there for almost 7 years. So at Navy Federal Credit Union, it's the largest role I've had so far. I basically the Chief Information Security Officer, so I'm the head of cybersecurity. I have about 250 people that are full-time people that work for me. And I have about, I would say 100 contractors that, come and go at any given time that work for me as well. And Navy Federal Credit Union, if you're not familiar, we're the largest credit union, which is a type of bank in the US and maybe the world. We manage over $200 billion in assets. We have over 15 million members or customers. We call our customers members. And primarily military, Department of Defense, or their friends and family. That's our member base, our field of membership. So let me.
I do have a question. How integrated is AI in your workplace? Is it are you guys anti-AI? Are you guys chill? Or are you guys super, we need to use it, it'll make us better?
We're kind of more on the we need to use it and we need to make it use better, but we're also cautious because it is a risk. So I look at AI as hear me? Okay. I look at AI as a more of a double-edged sword. So we look at AI as a double-edged sword, meaning that it can help you and hurt you at the same time. We know we have to use it because if we don't, then we'll miss out on some of the benefits, which I describe as speed, complexity, and scale that whoever's using it. But as a company as a whole, we know our competitors might be using this. And so because the competitors might be using it, if we don't use it, then they may get ahead of us, right? And our products may not be as relevant. And in security, we know that the attackers are using it, right? Attackers and the defenders. We're the defenders, and anyone who wants to steal money or hack us or steal information or take us down or for whatever, they're the attackers. So we know that the attackers have this benefit when they use it, and they have an advantage. And in order for us to close the divide on the advantage, so it's more of a fair playing field, then us as defenders have to use AI. So I don't think we really have a choice. We have to use it. The question is, if we use it too quick, then it may cause problems, it doesn't work as expected. It might hallucinate. It might just go haywire and break stuff. But if we don't use it, then they may be able to do these super large attacks that are very effective, and we just can't effectively defend against. Think about this: if someone's coming at you with a big machine as a regular human strength versus someone sitting in some super suit robot, right? It's pretty hard to defend against that. So you kind of need to fight a machine against a machine, and that's kind of how I look at it. So the short answer is we're kind of in the middle, and we're trying to adopt it as fast as we can, while at the same time balancing safety, security, and governance around that.
So my question is, how you said that AI might take jobs. Do you think there's going to be some jobs that are safe from AI, blue collar jobs?
I think no job will be safe from AI, but I think it'll take time. right? And what I mean by that is certain jobs, like I'm a waiter or a waitress, probably isn't going to be overtaken by AI robots just yet. Although Elon Musk is trying to create Optimus. He stopped building this just recently. The Tesla Model S and X is higher end cars because he wants to retool the factory to make these robots called Optimus robots. And those will be powered by AI. And so, you probably need a physical thing, right, to be a waiter or waitress. So I think certain jobs will probably take longer before they're more impacted or displaced. So, but like jobs like software development or anything with research or anything that like heavily uses a computer, I think that has a higher risk of certainly having, being disrupted. But I think long run, I don't really know. I don't have a crystal ball. I think AI is really, really developing fast. And I want to go back to another point that one of you had asked earlier about the economics. I look at AI as kind of like a drug a little bit. If you were a drug dealer and you wanted to get people hooked on it, you might give your drugs away for free, get people addicted to it, right? And then start charging a lot of money for it. That's kind of what's happening with AI. It turns out AI is actually like expensive to run. And so what's happened is if you wanted to subscribe as just an end user, right, you might essentially like pay for $20 a month, and you could use Anthropic Claude, right, or OpenAI's like ChatGPT, and it would like give you a whole bunch of usage, but you just paid no matter what, like $20 a month. Now what's happening is they're like, oh no, we're going to charge you for consumption, meaning we're going to charge you for like the amount of electrical and compute that you're using, and we're going to charge you based on they call them tokens, right, token consumption. And so instead of paying exactly $20 a month, we're going to charge you based on how much you use. So that's where it's going to start getting a lot more expensive, because the reason all this stuff is because it costs a lot more money now to use it than what people have been paying. So the economics are going to shift. The reason why I think that's important to the question you just asked about jobs is because if a company thinks it's cheaper to use AI over a person, then they're more inclined to say, okay, I'm going to use the AI and fire the people, right? But if it turns out that it costs more money to use the AI and the people, then the economic incentives won't be there, and there might not be as much adoption or disruption to
that. Any other questions?
I have one final question. Do you think if I'm a red teamer trying to penetrate, do you think using AI to scan the attack surface for openings is more dangerous than scanning for openings yourself with like Burp Suite or something, and using AI to create the payload for that specific vulnerability? Because we've seen Claude Mythos, which is not going to be released, apparently had a way higher rate of success with I think it was a Firefox JavaScript style. That I think it was remote code execution. And with things like copy fail and stuff like that, do you think that it's better for scanning or it's better for payload creation?
Okay, so I think I got most of that question. So I think your ask is AI better? It's like the frontier AI models like Mythos and OpenAI has like the cyber one they just announced too. Are they better for identifying vulnerabilities or building exploitation for vulnerabilities? Is that what you're asking? I don't know if I was comparing them side by side. I would want to say that they're equally. Hold on, give me 1 second. Just need to mark where I'm at. I would say that they're probably really good at both, but it's probably easier to exploit if you know the vulnerabilities there, because you've already found it, right? And so now I can focus on my energy on just trying to exploit that area versus finding a vulnerability. I have to scan a much bigger area first to identify it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. However, I will tell you something interesting that is on this topic, and I don't know, you didn't ask me this question directly, but I think it's relevant. So if you go to the website zerodayclock.com, have you guys heard of that?
Oh no, maybe. Yeah.
So if you go to zerodayclock.com, that website has a graph on it, and there's a couple things on the main page, but the graph has a dark line on it, and that dark line has like a date and a time. A date on the x-axis, on the y-axis, it has like the number of years or time. And what it's telling you is that it's the time between when a vulnerability is announced to the public or discovered, and how long it took before exploitation was viewed in the world, right? And so if you pull up that site, you'll see that 8 years ago in 2018, it took an average of 2.3 years between when a vulnerability was discovered and when people saw it being exploited. So think about that's how long I have to patch a system and fix it, because it takes a long time for someone to weaponize the vulnerability, if that makes sense, right? And then what you do is you say, okay, and then you look at 2025 last year, and you see that number it's an exponential curve going down. That went from 2.3 years to like 23 days, right? Which is like a huge difference in time. That has very big implications for how quickly these vulnerabilities can get prepared and make, companies and applications safe. And then you'll see this year, actually it's in the negatives now.
Yeah.
But we'll visit that in a second. Last year it was 10 hours, meaning it was down to 10 hours. And that means that, but it took less than a day when you found out of the vulnerability. 2 weeks before that, it was 20 hours. This week, like actually just in the last couple days, that number went to like -7 days. I don't know what it's at right now. That's saying that like when the vulnerability is announced, it was being exploited 7 days before you even knew the vulnerability existed. This has serious implications for how companies think about patching things and fixing things. Part of the reason for this right now, why it's negative, is because there's so many vulnerabilities being found with like Mythos or these other similar algorithms that the people that create the CVEs, which is like the registry for where all the vulnerabilities exist, they can't keep up. They stop taking submissions. So people can't even like publicly report them as fast. And so you're in this really messed up cycle right now where bad guys can get access to these vulnerabilities before you even know about them, and they can start exploiting them. And so, and the whole world has this problem. So if you think about this, what this means, that means that every business, every software, everything on the planet is now more susceptible to having exposed vulnerabilities where there's no known fix or no fix at all. And there's time for attackers to, kind of break into them and do something bad. And so what's likely going to happen, and you're seeing it with CopyFail, you called that out. CopyFail was last week. This week is like dirty. Yesterday was like dirty frag or something. I don't know. It was similar to CopyFail where like every, Linux version for the last 9 years or whatever is vulnerable to it. There's no fix. It's a full remote code execution. We're going to see more of these things coming out because the AI is really good at finding the vulnerabilities, and you're not going to be able to like patch yourself out of this situation. So you're going to see a lot more hacks, a lot more business disruption. Even if you're a company like my company that maybe has a lot of people and money to spend to protect the company, I have all sorts of suppliers, right, that I depend on that have to stay up. So like Microsoft that you guys brought up, we're a Microsoft customer. What if Microsoft gets hacked and goes down? Well, I might be up and running, but my Windows boxes may not be, right? Or things that depend on Microsoft. So this is a real problem. And if you're a smaller company and you don't have a ton of money to spend on all these different things, then you're going to have more business disruption, and that's going to cause a lot of problems. So just something to think about. We're heading into probably some pretty intense times with all these vulnerabilities and all the implications of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah.
So would that create more jobs in defense because there's more vulnerabilities being weaponized at times, or since they're successful, you can't really defend them?
No, I think it's going to create a lot more job opportunities. So while AI may displace a lot of people's jobs, if people are willing to learn different things and even use AI for themselves to like enhance their abilities, then it's also going to create a lot of jobs too. And in this particular case, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people selling technologies, which will create jobs to help protect against what I just described. There'll be people that, work at companies to try to like put all these technologies together and defend against what I'm describing. So I think it's going to create a lot of opportunity, but it's also going to create a lot of disruption, and anything that depends on a computer or software is going to be, more vulnerable in the short term. Like over the next several years, I think it's going to be messy. And then, defenders will be able to like take these technologies that the attackers are doing and get rid of the vulnerabilities in their code before it goes out, right? So like eventually they'll start using these and they'll make the code better and safer, and you'll have like a better situation. So in the long run, it may be that the defenders, have the win, but getting from that to right now is tough, because if you think about it, like a company, when they want to put a new software or tool out, they have to go through all this governance. They have to like get approvals and review boards and all this stuff that takes a while, right? They don't want to break stuff. But if you're an attacker, if you're a bad actor, you don't have to do that. You just go like try whatever you want, and you got to get it right once, right? But us defenders, we got to get it right like every time, or you're going to see our systems go down. So if you're robbing people's houses, like it sucks that you tried to rob a house and you couldn't get in, but you can just go to the next door next to them and try to rob that one. And if you score enough wins, you're going to make money. Maybe you can make a living off of it. And that's kind of how it works for companies. When the bad actors are trying to break in, they just really have to get it right every once in a while. Whereas like we got to keep them all out. So it's asymmetric warfare is what we call it. It's asymmetric.
I think that's a nice closing note.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like the way you described asymmetric as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Sorry for my bad Wi-Fi or my network connect and running around during the call. But if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ping me or text me or whatever. I'm happy to answer them.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much for
Take it
joining.
easy. No problem. Bye.
All right. Bye.